What are unethical practices that schools do, requiring you to purchase textbooks brand new from the college's bookstore, because that's the only way to get the access code to complete the required assignments on the publisher's website. Not allowing kids to use the restroom. As someone who was diagnosed with multiple reproductive issues at an early age, I had some pretty intense periods, and this rule made school even worse. Got the nickname paint bottle because my school was infamous for denying the bathroom. They were closed to all students during a set time because of misuse, and I literally had no help from anyone at all. Never realized it was as bad for other people too. Passing students that aren't ready for the next grade because they need to pad their passing rates to keep funding. It's setting the kids up for failure down the road. Some schools focus really hard on certain metrics. One school in my area has a ridiculously high rate of graduates that go to college. They do this in part by strongly encouraging students not intending to go to college to drop out or test out in their senior year. Can't remember the name of it, but there's a principle that once you start using a metric as a benchmark, it stops being useful as a metric. Like if there weren't targets to hit, the percent of students who go to college would be a good way to compare which schools in the region produce more college-ready students. But because every school wants to improve that number by any means possible, you can't really guarantee it anyway. Maybe some schools fudge the numbers like that, but also maybe some schools put too much emphasis on college readiness over practical skills, or other schools force everyone to at least apply, etc. It's a bummer. Giving preference to kids that parents donate money and fraternize with teachers or headmasters. The person that bullied me was the child of the school board governor. The head teacher decided to sit both of us kids down to talk it out, and she burst into crocodile tears and told them I was the one hurting her. Guess which one of us got believed and which one got yelled at? Yep, it pays to have important parents. I had two classmates who were being bullied by the same girl, who was a daughter of someone rich and maybe even famous in some sort of way. One classmate comfortably middle class and the other was rich. Very rich. Middle class girl had to put up with this girl for 2 years and the teachers did nothing. Rich girl became a target and less than 2 months reaches breaking point. The girl is suspended, returns and spends a week in isolation. Has her form group changed to accommodate what was basically a school-based restraining order, and was kept back every day after school to ensure there was no way she could retaliate outside school grounds. I was the victim of a boy with rich parents and a promising career, and the school did nothing. So that didn't surprise me. But the difference with that rich classmate, it was unbelievable. Firing lunchroom staff for serving food to poor students whose families can't afford to pay. That boils my blood. I was one of the kids who relied on the free or reduced lunch program in high school because my mom got laid off and my parents couldn't afford to give us lunch money every day, so we had to utilize the program. I never once was denied lunch, thankfully, but I've seen the stories of kids being denied perfectly good food because they couldn't pay. I would gladly pay more in taxes for each and every student to have a hot meal twice a day. Only having one bathroom for open in a high school. There are thousands of kids. This was the deal for us for a little bit last semester when the TikTok trend about stealing things was going around, and it eventually got to the point that the only restroom that was open was the one near the auditorium. The walk from the classroom to that particular restroom could be 2 to 3 minutes, depending on where the class is, and they were always crowded, yet teachers would still expect us to only take a little bit. My daughter's best friend was running track and the coaches were yelling at her to run more laps. She told them her legs were hurting really badly, so they yelled at her and told her to run another lap. She started crying because of the pain and ended up falling, breaking both kneecaps. As she lay there screaming, the coaches didn't even come to help her. One of the kids called the police, and when they showed up the coaches acted like they didn't know what to do with the situation. To make it worse, my daughter was on the volleyball and track team and they tried to do the same to her, but I went up to the school and went off on the principal and coaches about pushing the kids too hard, just so the coaches could win their games. I sent my daughter to a rehab for her leg issues, and they said her legs were stressed and the coaches were overworking her, so I will be taking this up with the school superintendent. This is at a university level. Say you are a grad student who just secured an opportunity to travel internationally with university funding for your research. You put in a travel request with a suggested travel and lodging budget that gets approved within your funding. You, the grad student, still have to front the money no matter how much it is, and reimbursement can take 3 weeks 3 months depending on how much pressure the finance office is under, who operates on a first in first out basis. So, you secured this wonderful grant for thousands of dollars, making no slash little money as a grad student. Maybe you are even a fully funded student paying no tuition. You still may be too poor to actually conduct the research you were brought there to do. Awarding perfect attendance, encouraging kids to go to school while sick is pretty unethical. If you ask me, my school had exemptions, meaning if you had perfect attendance each semester you got to skip 2 of your final exams, 1 or 2 absences or tardies, and you got 1 skip. More than that you have to take them all. We were all sick all the time, because no one could bear to give up their exemptions. Bullied students are told to leave because it's easier to kick out a quiet victim than a loud bully. My best friend's daughter was told to maybe wear clothes that make her less of a target for bullies. My friend was very poor and her kid often wore used, older, and not very trendy clothing. I went out of my way to give her clothes and she loved it and was the most appreciative person. Unfortunately, it didn't stop and she ended up having to switch schools. I had a student who never showed up and never did work in my class. The principal asked me to change his F to a 75. I emailed back, explaining that the student never made an effort, etc. He told me to be a part of the team and do as I was told. I was only a second year teacher and was afraid of losing my job, so I obliged. Same principal. A couple years later, we had a very large student, and as she walked down the bus ramp one day, some boys called out the bus window the filthy things they wanted to do to her, while also calling her fat. I wrote them up and chewed them out. When the principal read the referral, he simply said, "Boys will be boys," and tore up the referral. To this day, I wish I would've asked him what he would've done if that was done to one of his daughters, but I was so shocked. It still boils my blood. I'm the case of there being a fire. I think it's stupid we have to go in alphabetical order, so Adam is happy and healthy, but Zach just turned into ash. In my opinion, they should all just get in a line, no matter what. Making school start at 7 AM and the bus route comes by your house before 6:30 AM, so you have to get up around 5:30 to 6 AM every morning. Then say you have an extracurricular activity that takes at least 2 hours, but if it's a sports game it's probably closer to at least 4 hours. Then let's say you have a test tomorrow as well as some homework, so you study and work for at least 2 hours. At this point you have spent well over half your day doing school related activities. If you want to get a full 8 hours sleep, which is unlikely, that leaves you with about 2 hours of free time per day, of which a good chunk of it is probably spent eating a meal, showering, getting ready for the next day, etc. And then people are surprised when teenagers are always tired, depressed, anxious, etc. Schools are messed up. Just about every school is very hierarchical and teaches kids to never question authority, in this case the teacher or principal. Teachers are on occasion incorrect or may poorly explain things, and school policy can sometimes be profoundly unjust. It is heavily indoctrinated that children should never question these things, and it is often punished when they do. This leads to people growing up with a very unhealthy hierarchical approach to just about all aspects of life. Making children have to pay for their lunch. I grew up where some students paid full, some paid reduced, and some didn't pay at all, depending on the family's income. If you didn't pay, you got a sandwich with 4 slices of cheese and that was all. But honestly, no one should have to pay at all for their school lunch. Holding your records and diploma because your parents are behind in payments. I went to a very good but expensive private school, which my parents could consistently pay when I was very young, but struggled after 2008 when they'd be behind in payments. The school would hold my grades sheet from my parents, so I could never see the comments my teachers would have about me. Finally, at my graduation ceremony, I couldn't have access to my diploma nor my grades, which I needed to complete my college dossier, until my parents paid what they owed to the school. Of course people should pay their dues, but taking it with the students made me feel very bad. So for about a year, I worked for a federal student loan servicer. People would call in and I try to help them find a way to manage their student loans. I don't want to really unravel the student loan thing, but there are financial aid offices out there that are straight up lying to their potential students. If I had one person tell me that they were told they wouldn't have to pay back their loans if they graduated, I'd chalk it up to that person being an idiot. When I had 10 people tell me they were told that, I think there's someone misinforming them. All these students attended Bible colleges in Tennessee and Arkansas.